this tutorial you're going to need some acrylic black yarn, acrylic brown, and then any type of plush tan and orange, and I forgot to include it, but a white chunky yarn. You're going to need a 7mm hook and then a 4.25 hook for the feet, and then your other supplies, needle, stitch marker, and scissors. Starting with your orange yarn, we're going to single crochet 6 into a magic ring. Go ahead and tighten off your magic ring and be a little bit more careful than I was. I always break these chunky yarns. After you get your magic ring figured out, go ahead and slip stitch it shut so then it won't open later. At this point you should have 6 single crochets in your magic ring. We're going to go ahead and start on round 2, which is just increasing all the way around. So you're going to place 2 single crochets into each stitch. Okay, once you're done with that, place your stitch marker in and then we'll get started on round 3. Starting with round 3, we're going to single crochet, and then the next 2 stitches after that we're going to increase. So single crochet and then increase, and then do another increase. And you're going to repeat that pattern all the way around till you get back to your stitch marker. I'm going to show you how I finish it, so I'm going to do that single crochet, then increase, and then I'll move that stitch marker and do that last increase in there. Place your stitch marker in that last stitch that we just did to mark our spot, and then we'll get started on row 4. For row 4, we're going to start with a single crochet, increase, and then repeat that pattern. Alright, I'm going to go ahead and finish that row and I'll meet you at the end. Finish your row off and then move that stitch marker. Then we're going to get ready and move on to row 5. For this row, we're starting off with 2 single crochet and then increase, and then we'll repeat that pattern. So there's that first single crochet, second single crochet, and then this third one is going to be an increase. And go ahead and repeat that, and I'll meet you back at the end. I'm going to show you again how I finish and move the stitch marker. Everybody kind of does their stitch markers different. I like doing it in the very last stitch. Some people like doing it in their first one. I'm going to take that stitch marker out and then finish the row with an increase. And then the loop very next to my hook, that's where I'm going to place the stitch marker. Okay, row 6 is a little bit different. We're going to be doing a single crochet in the back loop only. So I'm just showing you here where the back loop is. It can be kind of tricky to see. If you see that edge on the side of your circle, you can see it, but I also like to hold it facing towards me so I can see it a little bit better. I'll show you guys a couple of the back loop only. If you do stretch it, I found that it's easier to separate the two. But we're just going to do a single crochet all the way around, and I'll meet you at the end. Finishing off the row is no different than any other row, but I'm just going to show you again because that back loop can get pretty confusing. So we're going to finish like normal, take that stitch marker out, single crochet in the back loop only, and then we're actually done with this piece. So when you're done putting that stitch marker back in, you can fasten off or just leave a long loop and then set it aside. But we're all done with the pumpkin pie part, and we'll get started on the crust. Grab your tan yarn, and we're going to use that same millimeter hook. To start with the crust portion, we're going to do the same 6 single crochet into a magic ring. And when you're done, of course, go ahead and tighten off your magic ring. This time I did it a little bit more carefully than the last. It's still pretty difficult with that plush yarn. Slip stitch to complete the magic ring. And immediately going into round 2, we're going to go all the way around with some increases. So place 2 single crochets into each stitch. At the end, you should have 12 stitches. When I finish up the row, this is when I like to place my stitch marker and get started on round 3. We're going to single crochet and then increase 2. So start with that single crochet and then move on to your increase. And then place another increase in that third stitch. Repeat that pattern until you get to the very end at your stitch marker, and I'll meet you back there. Starting round 4, this is where it gets a little bit easier. Single crochet and then increase all the way around. So the first one was a single crochet I just did, and now I'm making an increase. Next one, single crochet, and then another increase. We're going to repeat that pattern until you get back to your stitch marker. Move that stitch marker and we're going to start on round 5. So you're going to single crochet 2 and then increase. So there's that first single crochet, second single crochet, and then in that third stitch you're going to increase. Go ahead and repeat that pattern until you get all the way back to your stitch marker, and I'll meet you back when we get there. Round 6, we're going to back loop only, single crochet all the way around, so it's going to be just like that orange piece. You can see the front and the back. We're going to go in the back loop only. Finishing this row up, I'm going to move that stitch marker and place one more back loop only single crochet. Place that stitch marker back and we'll get started on round 7. Round 7 is pretty simple. Go ahead and normally single crochet all the way around, so we're going through both loops again. You'll notice as you're finishing this round up, your piece is going to start curling. That's what we want. It looks good. And we're going to finish off, and then once you do, turn your project right side out. You can see now if you move the orange piece on top of the crust, it's starting to look like a pumpkin pie. But now we're going to move on to the whipped cream. So with your chunky white, go ahead and chain 12 in a row. That's just how many I prefer, but if you want a bigger piece of whipped cream, of course chain more. If you want something a little bit smaller, chain less. It's up to you. When you're done making your chain, go ahead and turn your work, and then going into that very next stitch, go ahead and increase down the chain with just single crochets. So there I just did my first single crochet. In the same stitch I'm going to place another, and I'm going to go down by increasing. It can be kind of hard to separate the stitches as you go down. I'm going to do a couple more, and then here in a little bit I'll show you what it's going to start to look like. As you're working on this, it's going to start to curl up into itself. It's actually what we want. That's what gives it that whipped cream look. But I'm going to go ahead and finish it and then show you how to fasten it off. So in that same stitch that you just left off in, go ahead and do a slip stitch and then leave a long tail for sewing. You can go ahead and cut that piece off. What I do now is I just let it curl up into itself until I reach the desired look. Once I'm happy with it, I grab my sewing needle and then I sew up and down through the layers until it's secure and the whipped cream won't unravel. Once I feel like it's good and secure, I'm just going to set that side apart and then get my orange circle, and this is when I just do a slip stitch and fasten it off. You don't need to leave a long tail for sewing, just enough to where you can hide it in the back and then stuff it into the project. What I like to do is just slip stitch it down the back so it's secure and won't unravel. This is when I would grab my whipped cream and then start placing it where I like. I kind of like the whipped cream up on the top left part of the face, and then this is when I grab my eyes, and I'll show you where I like to put those. I don't remember what size eyes I use, it kind of changes each time. I just do what I personally like. To place the eyes, I go directly in that center of that magic ring, and then I just go 2 to 3 rows out and place it in. Do the same for the other one. And holding that whipped cream up, I'm pretty happy with how the face looks. I'm going to go ahead and secure those ends. For the whipped cream, there's no rhyme or reason how I sew it in. I just make sure it's not going to look floppy or fall off. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch that on. Same with your orange piece of yarn, go ahead and wind it down in between and then fasten the tail off and then cut off any excess. We're going to be hiding that into our pie later. Now I would say this is probably the trickier part of this whole thing, is connecting the orange piece to the crust. So line your pieces up and then start where we left off with the crust by putting your hook back in there and slip stitch those 2 pieces together. We're actually going to be making the border of the crust while we connect the 2 pieces together. I'm showing you here, go through both stitches on the tan part and then go through both loops on that orange part. So you're going to have 4 loops total on your hook. And this is when we'll start our sequence of single crochet and then half double crochet, single crochet, all in that same stitch. So I just did that half double crochet and I'm going back in again with that single crochet. Okay, showing you again, I'm going to go through both loops on that tan, both loops on that orange, and then do that single crochet, half double crochet, and then 1 more single crochet in that same loop. It's very important while you're going down to keep those pieces lined up, because if you get off, it's going to start looking crooked. And just by doing 3 of the stitches, you can already see the border of that crust is coming in. I'm going to do a couple more and then show you what it looks like. Here we are halfway and it's already looking super cute with that crust. It has that ridge effect. I'm going to go ahead and do more, and when you get to about, I would say 3/4 of the way there, that's when I would start stuffing your piece. Try not to stuff it too much here because we still need enough room to close it off. Now we're at the last stitch and you can see it's really taking its shape. If you can stuff in a little bit more, this is where I would do it before we close it off. I don't know if I'm the only one that does this, but I really like to give it that squish test and be sure that that stuffing is distributed all the way around. To close it off, we're going to do that same sequence of single crochet, half double crochet, and then single crochet in the same stitch. And then in the loop over, whenever you're done with that, just finish off with a slip stitch and then leave a longer tail to where you can hide it, and then you're done. I'm just showing you here that I'm going in that same first slip stitch that we did earlier to finish off the last slip stitch. So cut your yarn off and then fasten it by tying it off. And then that's when I like to grab my sewing needle and then just hide the excess yarn into the plushie to where it won't come out. And I'm really happy with how it's looking so far. For the pumpkin pie part, we're going to set it aside and then start on the feet. So grab your brown acrylic yarn and then start with a magic ring. Work in 6 single crochets into your magic ring. This yarn is a whole lot easier to fasten off for the magic ring. But starting with round 2, our very next stitch we're going to increase, increase, and then do a half double crochet increase. And we're doing that pattern twice. So I just did that first increase, I'm going into that second increase. For the third stitch, I'm doing a half double crochet. So loop over, go through, make a half double crochet, and then place in another half double crochet in that same loop. We're going to repeat that pattern, so your next stitch is going to be a regular increase. Another increase in that next one. And you're going to finish that row off with a half double crochet increase. Place your stitch marker in on that last stitch and we'll get started on row 3. Row 3 is going to be easy, just do a single crochet increase pattern all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. So I just did that first single crochet. In this one I'm going to do an increase and repeat that. So single crochet and increase. Finish the row by moving your stitch marker, and to start with your next row we're going to just single crochet all the way around until you get back to that starting point. You can tell that it's going to start folding over on itself, and that's good. That's exactly what we want. For row 5, we're going to do a sequence of single crochet decrease all the way around. I like to do invisible decreases, which I'm showing you here. You just go in the front loop only and then decrease like normal. And then when you do your next single crochet, it's going to be through both loops. Here, I'm trying to show you a little bit better, but go through both loops when you do the single crochet. And I'll show you again the invisible decrease. You're going to go through both of those front loops only. If I can, I'm struggling a little bit. And then do a regular decrease. Keep doing that all the way around until you reach your stitch marker. Finishing off the row, go ahead and move your stitch marker and we'll start round 6. It'll be the same exact pattern, so do a single crochet, decrease, single crochet, decrease all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. This is where I would start to stuff your little foot, because after here you stuff as you go, it gets a little bit more difficult. And this is optional, but that long tail that we left from the magic ring, this is when I would cut it off and then just shove it in the foot. Round 7, super easy, just place a single crochet in each stitch all the way around until you get back to your stitch marker. Keep moving that stitch marker, and for the next 5 rows, single crochet all the way around. Be sure while you're going up the leg that you keep stuffing as you go. Okay, finishing those last couple stitches on that very last row. I'm just going to stuff to the very end. And you can make your leg as long as you want, short as you want. It's kind of up to you how you want to make it. But I do like stuffing the end of the foot a little bit more than the actual leg. When you do finish your leg off, go through both sides of your leg. So 4 loops on your hook right now, and slip stitch shut. You'll go down until you run out of room and then leave a long tail for sewing. I just went through that first side, and then I'm going to bring my hook through that back side to be sure I close it off, and then that's when I would make that slip stitch. Go ahead and tie off that leg and leave a long tail for sewing. Make a second foot and I'll meet you back after we're done with that. Both legs are done now. I'm going to grab that pumpkin pie piece and then I'll show you where I like to sew those legs on. It's right at that border where that last row on the crust meets the border. That's where I find it naturally likes to sit when he's sitting up. So just adjust where you like your legs and then start sewing it on. I don't really have a rhyme or reason to how I sew my pieces on. I just make sure they're secure. I'll go ahead and still show you how I like to sew this first one on, just so you get an idea of the placement. I am all done sewing that on. It fits perfectly. I also found I like when the legs kind of stick out a little bit. It's more natural. But once I'm done sewing on that second leg, I make sure I'm happy with it, and I tie them off in that same stitch in the very back. I tie it a couple times so it's secure, and then I cut it down and then just stuff it in to where it hides. For the smiley face, I again don't have any rhyme or reason to where I like to put it. I just naturally find the center of the circle and find that natural smiley face curve that it makes and go based off of that. Of course, you can make your smiley face bigger, smaller, however you want. It's up to you. But I like going in through that same entrance point to where I can tighten it off at the bottom. Here, I'll show you here. It's kind of hard to explain. I loop it around the top once again to where when you tighten that piece, it makes that natural curve to a smiley face. Like so, and then I just adjust it to where I'm happy with it, and I bring both ends to the back, tie it off, and then that's the last part. That's all you need. I am very careful during this part though, because if you add too much tension when you're tying off your black yarn, it can actually mess with the face you just made. So just triple checking once again after I tie and cut my piece. I'm happy with it. I shove it back in the back, and then you now have a cute little Jellycat pumpkin pie. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I hope you make one. If there's any other food you want me to make a pattern of a Jellycat into, I would be so happy to do that. Let me know down below. But until then, I'll see you next time, and bye!